Hi there everybody, welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph, I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So today we're here with our Wednesday night favorites, and we're doing our top 25 greatest, most iconic solo rock artists of all time, or rock solo artists of all time, however you want to say it. So I picked out 25, and that was no easy task. There's actually not really much separating other than the top, maybe top 3 guys. Everybody else is pretty much like a hair apart, right? And there's a lot of people that could have easily been on this list, but you only have 25 spots, right? So you can't put 36 or 21 or 31 or 27 in a 25 spot venue. So anyways, how I'm doing this is I picked those solo artists that are the most iconic. That doesn't necessarily mean they're the most popular. They're just the ones who I think have the most iconic status, that people know them and think of them as greatness of them. Some of them are fantastic, others I'm not as fond of, some I don't even know much about. But I decided that it should be the most iconic ones, not my favorites, because my favorites list would be very different from this. The other thing is that there'll be no pop artists on here. Yeah, there's going to be a few guys, especially near the top end, who have a lot of pop music, but they're on here because of their rock and roll part of their thing. Some of them have become more pop oriented as time goes on, but they are on here because of that. The ones who are only pop artists, the modern day pop artists and the divas and those type of people, like, you know, King of Pop and stuff like that, they're not going to be on this list, and I don't want them on the list. It's a rock and roll thing. You know, some people may say they're rock, some may say they're not, but they're definitely pop, so I'm not including them on this list. So that's basically the inclusion is anybody who was in the rock genre and thought of as being in the rock genre. So I've done a top 25, and we will go from the least, number 25, right up to number 1. This is nothing new. This is the way I always do it. And also I will give the honorable mention. I think I got about a dozen, at least a dozen honorable mentions here as well. Easily could have made this a top 50, I think, too, but we're going to go with 25 and leave it at that. Okay, so without further ado, need my glasses. Well, maybe I don't. We'll see. We're going to start with number 25. So number 25 is a artist that I love. He's my favorite vocalist of all time. To me, the YouTube community anyways, I think he is one of the most iconic rock stars in history with the YouTube community. Is he as well known in the outworld? Probably not. Probably could easily not be on this list because the average person might not even know who he is. But he's too iconic to leave off, and so I've decided to put him on. Ronnie James Dio comes on at number 25. One of the great vocalists in heavy metal history, rock history, whatever you want to call it. This is a very iconic album as well. Holy Diver, I believe this is. Yeah, I think it is. Anyways, yes, great vocalist. Has been with some of the most iconic rock bands in history. Rainbow, Black Sabbath. He's done his own thing. Heaven and Hell, which is the more recent version of Black Sabbath. Unfortunately, Ronnie passed away in 2010 or 2009, one of those 2 years. And but I think he deserves to be on here just for his status amongst those people on YouTube, if nothing else. Okay, so next up, I'll just put these up here so they don't get injured. Did have a bit of a collapse this week with a couple of I banged against it and knocked a couple of my disc holders over. Including my Rush disc, which was kind of upsetting to me, but none of them broke. I was lucky. I was very lucky, actually. Got a couple of chips on my new stack, but that's it. Okay, so on to number 24. I do not have a prop for this guy. The primary reason is I don't really like him. I don't like his voice at all. It's too nasally. I don't hate it, but it's just not a voice. He, as a music writer, he's one of the best. As a singer, not so good. And we're talking about Bob Dylan. So number 24 is Bob Dylan. Number 23, a guy I listened to a lot early on in my early part of my rock listening career, which started in the 78 era, like halfway through 78. Up till that point, it was pretty much Kiss only, but then I started listening to other stuff, and this guy came on and was part of that genre, Steve Miller. Lots of really great stuff. I love this collection too. I'm not a huge collection person of greatest hits or whatever, but I do have about 4 or 5 of them that I really like a lot, and this is one of them. I really like Steve Miller. I think he's one of the great kind of rock, progressive rock, pop rock singers of his time period, and so he deserves to be on here, number 23. So number 22, another kind of iconic guy in the sense of the style and the limited amount of time he had. He didn't have the great album sales or the great singles on the radio stuff. He did have a few, but not a lot. Sorry. But definitely he deserves to be on this list for his guitar ability, for his blues, for his notoriety with David Bowie. Yeah, he's just well known amongst the musicians, at least in this community, at least in this genre. Stevie Ray Vaughan, SRV, and this is one of his best albums. This got his Pride and Joy and Love Struck Baby, Dirty Pool, which I like. Yeah, it's just lots of really good. Texas Flood. Yeah, really great album. Really great performer. Fantastic guitarist. Great showmanship. This guy transfixes you when he plays the guitar. He's just amazing. So that's for number 22, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Number 21, another fantastic guitar player. I don't have any props for him. He's not a guy I follow much, but I appreciate his ability. I've seen it more in the last, since his passing, than I have at any other time. But he's an amazing guitar player. We're talking about Jeff Beck. Any list of iconic solo artists that doesn't include Jeff Beck, to me, doesn't do it justice. Okay, so up from him, another iconic rock singer, had a very short career, was part of the group of 27. Fantastic vocalist, very different, unique voice. Loved her stuff, loved the sound of her voice. Not a huge fan of all of her music, but I do appreciate the way she sings it, and we're talking, of course, about Janis Joplin. Next up is another guitar player. I put him a little higher than the previous two just because of his longevity, his different style, his notoriety, his just some classic stuff. I'm talking about Santana. So I know some of you are going to say, well, Jeff Beck, Stevie Ray Vaughan, probably more notoriety than him. Maybe not. But like I said, from probably about 25 through to about 13 or 12 or 13, there's not much separating me. This guy could go 12th or he could go 25th. It's really splitting hairs at this point. Next one up, this is a musician I like a lot. I love his vocals, I love his music, I like his folk elements to his music, I like the pop element to his music. I like everything about the guy. Well, mostly everything. I don't like his relationship with Carrie Fisher, but that's not my issue here. So we're talking about Paul Simon. Yes, I like this album. It's pretty new for me, but I've listened to it a couple times. I do like it. So Paul Simon comes in at number 18. Number 17, another great guitar player. Seems to be a lot of them today. Again, all these guitar players could switch around fairly easily. I just think that this guy, Eric Clapton, is better than all of the other ones that we've mentioned. Some people would disagree, I get it. But I just think his longevity and his style and his overall abilities put him on this list for sure. So number 17, Eric Clapton. Okay, now we're getting into the top stack here. Well, not quite, but we're close. So next up is a musician that I do appreciate the huskiness of his voice, the sound of his voice, the overall popularity he had, the notoriety, especially with the women, his ability to jump from genre to genre. He was a rocker originally and became a little bit of a disco guy and a pop guy. We're talking about Rod Stewart. Not a musician that I listen to much, but I do appreciate the fact that he is well known and well liked by a lot of people. My dad liked him too, so that wins some brownie points for me. Number 15, another guy with tremendous ability, tremendous orchestrational ability to write music, ability to put stuff together, guitar playing, phenomenal, another great guitar player. Has a ton of releases, some of them progressive, some of them jazz fusion, some of them just quirky, lots of that quirkiness in there, but an amazing musician in a lot of ways. I've never really jumped on board the wagon. I do listen to him on occasion, and we're talking about Frank Zappa here, of course, number 15. Number 14, another guitar player, but not necessarily in here because of his guitar playing ability, his musicality, his voice, his overall greatness. The fact that he came from the Beatles doesn't hurt his cause. All of that, I think he had to be on here. George Harrison, number 14, had to be on here. Okay, so now we're into the top side of the back side of the top. Yeah, I guess the top would be better. And this guy just edged out them, basically because he's got like 3 or 4 really strong albums with a lot of real catchy riffs. Is he a pop artist? Yes, but he also has a rocky element to his music. I've always thought of him as a rock musician. Some people would say he's a pop guy. I don't know, you tell me. Billy Joel, got to be on this list, I think. Number 13. Lots of really good music by him, and lots of sales. Very iconic, very well known. Car going by here. So next up on the list is a musician who's kind of creepy in some ways, has a great stage presence, has one of those iconic voices you can't forget. Lots of really great stuff early on, especially. He could have been on the band list as well, but because of the band's name, I figured he would be better off in the solo artist list. And we're talking about Alice Cooper, of course. Such creepy but kind of really catchy, interesting stuff. Really wonderful, some really wonderful instrumentation too. Fantastic individual, Alice Cooper. Number 11, another guy who might be considered a bit of a pop artist as well, coming from a progressive rock bound past, but lots of really catchy stuff. Some of his earlier albums a little bit more rocky, but to me, he's just an iconic vocal singer, and he has to be on this list. And we're talking about Phil Collins, of course. Number 12, number 11. Number 10, one of the heavy metal heavyweights of his time, actually became more of a heavy metal player when he became solo, coming from an iconic rock band that he did. And his first 2 albums were absolutely legendary. His first live album was different. It was good, and he's done some stuff then, and some of his more newer stuff is actually pretty good too. And he's just well known. I can't imagine people who would not know this man, Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah, great stuff. Great. This particular album and the one that follows it are absolutely legendary, and he has to be on any iconic list. I can't imagine there's very few people out there who haven't at least heard his name, if nothing else. Next up, another guy who's just basically known for his name as well. I don't know a lot of his material. I do have a couple of his albums, this one being one of them, The River, Bruce Springsteen. I guess he's Americana personified. Lots of really kind of classic, kind of rocky stuff, folky stuff. They almost had country western sound, not really, but a little bit like that. Definitely a really well-known, at least in North America. I don't know how he does around the world, really. I never got a grasp of that, but I think that he's iconic enough to be on this list. So there you go, number 9, Bruce Springsteen. Number 8, one of my favorite musicians in my group of 8, the only solo artist in my group of 8, has just one great album after another, become very iconic after leaving his iconic band, just producing some of the best solo work that I believe is out there, and fairly well known too, and well liked and well respected in musically. And we're talking about Peter Gabriel. Yep. Number 8. Number 7 I gave by just a hair, and I actually prefer Gabriel, but I just think this man's name is so well known, and his music is so good, especially the early 70s stuff. People are going to know right away that it's got to be Paul McCartney. This is a great album, by the way, as well, if you get a chance to listen to it. It's a live album, fantastic. Lots of really classic stuff on here, not just his own stuff, but Beatles stuff as well. Okay, number 6, the top 6 now. We're getting to some really iconic people now. Could Paul McCartney have finished higher? Yes. I don't think he's produced as much good stuff in recent years, but this guy has. Neil Young. This is Neil Young and Crazy Horse. He could have like 15 albums with Crazy Horse, and then a whole whack of his own stuff as well, and some with other bands as well. But this one's one of the better ones, and such a great album. His early stuff is so fantastic. Even some of the stuff he did in the 90s is really good as well, and he's still continuing. To me, he's one of the great Canadian legends, probably one of the most well-known Canadian artists in history. Deserves to be on any iconic list, in my opinion. So here he is, Neil Young. And there was one artist I forgot to write on here. As soon as I seen Neil's name, I realized that that person needs to be on, should have been on this list, and for some reason I just completely left them out. And to be honest with you, I think I left them out on purpose, because they're, to me, they're not really rock. They're more of a folk artist, but I'll get to them later. Okay, so number 5, one of the most iconic, lots of great stuff, just one hit after another, very well known, very distinct vocals, and just well loved, and did it cross into the movies and everything. We're talking about David Bowie. This is one of his great albums too. Yeah, he just has so much good stuff. He has to be on the list, so he, to me, makes the top 5. Probably should be higher. I think he should probably be higher. If it was personal, he would be. Okay, number 4, my prop. I don't know if I lost it when that fell, or I can't find it, but anyways, it was, we're talking about Beatles legend John Lennon. I think he's just a little bit more well known, mostly for his controversial outpouring of the way he handled himself, and of course his assassination. All of that stuff has contributed to his legendary status. I think he's a little bit more legendary than Paul McCartney. Not a lot. I think without Paul McCartney, the Beatles don't exist. But John Lennon definitely is iconic to the point where he has to be on this list, and very high up. So he's finishing 4th. The last 3, I think, pretty much were going to be the final 3. I wasn't quite sure whether this one or the next one was going to be number 2. Number 1 is a gimme. But I put Jimi Hendrix here in 3rd. Are You Experienced? Great album. He only had a short career, but he produced a ton of well-known rock stable hits, and also his status, his bursting onto the scene, on the rock scene, all of that is all legendary. His whole story is legendary, so he's got to be in the top 25 and easily comes in at number 3. Could have been number 2. I debated it, but I thought this guy just had more hits and has continued to produce more, has a longer career, even though the bulk of his work has now been in the pop genre for the past 40 years, but that stuff in the 70s is legendary and still well loved. We're talking about Elton John, of course. This guy's just done it all. He's a pop diva for sure, or a pop wizard, a very famous man. A lot of people know him. I can't imagine you wouldn't know him. But the stuff that he came out with in the 70s is absolutely fantastic rock music, at least in the early 70s anyway. So Elton John to me is number 2. Number 1, it's got to be the king himself, Elvis Presley, king of rock and roll. Can't have a top 25 most iconic rock solo artist and not have Elvis on there. Then it just loses all meaning. So Elvis Presley comes in at number 1. I don't really think it's that close. He's just renowned from generation to generation. Every generation knows who Elvis Presley was. You know, everybody knows the number of hits he had, his whole iconic stature with him. He put rock music kind of on the map, I think. So, you know, he's kind of like the Beatles of solo artists. You know, the Beatles maybe put the band stuff on the list, and he put the rock genre on the list, but definitely the most iconic. I don't think there was really any question about this. So I'm just going to reiterate them from top to bottom this time, and then I'll give you my honorable mentions. Number 1 was Elvis Presley, of course. Number 2, Elton John. Number 3, Jimi Hendrix. Number 4, John Lennon. Number 5, David Bowie. Number 6, Neil Young. Number 7, Paul McCartney. Number 8, Peter Gabriel. Number 9, Bruce Springsteen. Number 10, the madman himself, Ozzy Osbourne. Number 11, Phil Collins. Number 12, Alice Cooper. Number 13, Billy Joel. Number 14, George Harrison. Number 15, Frank Zappa. Number 16, Rod Stewart. Number 17, Eric Clapton. Number 18, Paul Simon. Number 19, Carlos Santana. Number 20, Janis Joplin. Number 21, Jeff Beck. Number 22, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Number 23, Steve Miller. Number 24, legendary pop, folk, but rock singer as well, and music and iconic music writer, Bob Dylan. And then of course, last but not least, my favorite, Ronnie James Dio. Okay, so some of the honorable mentions. The one that I recognized halfway up the list, and then I remembered why I didn't include him, was Joni Mitchell. Joni Mitchell was a rock star, I think, but she was more of a folk star, and I just decided if I wasn't going to include pop stars, like people that are primarily pop stars, I just couldn't see myself including her. If she was going to be included, she would have been quite high up, I think, but she wasn't. The same as you know, people like Michael Jackson, who I just think of as a pop star. Okay, so some of the other more honorable mentions that could have easily been on this list. Sure. Tom Petty, Ted Nugent, John Fogerty of Creedence Clearwater Revival, Peter Frampton. I think with Frampton is that he was huge when he was huge, but he only really had the one great album, and the rest of them were just kind of mediocre, and he just never produced anything after that, and that's unfortunate because he was great. Ricky Nelson, of course, Don Henley of the Eagles, Bill Haley and his Comets. Pat Benatar, it pained me not to put her on the list, but I couldn't think of anybody that I could take off to put her on, but she deserves to be on there. Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, punk hero. Prince, of course, I wasn't going to include him on this list. because he's a bit of a pop star, but he did have some really great guitar work, so that was part of the reason why I put him in the honorable mentions. And last but not least, Van Morrison. So yeah, and I'm sure there's others I didn't think of, and if you think of them, you're more than welcome to put them in the comments below. How did you find this list? Did it include all the people that you think it should have included? Was I negligent? Did I miss somebody? If I did, I apologize. Don't get too caught up in the numbers, because like I said, most of these could have flipped around fairly easily on any given day. The point is that they're all very iconic and most people know who they are. I think I made a fairly extensive honorable mention, but I'm sure I've missed people. So if I missed anybody, we do want to give everybody the attention they deserve, so put them in the comments below. Please hit the like button, it's much appreciated, and hit the subscribe button, and we will see you next week with another 25. We're coming with, finally going to do my top 25 favorite progressive rock bands, and this will be like kind of an update or a revised edition, because I did the original one almost 2 years ago. My channel has now been active for 2 years, and I wanted to redo this one. I think it'll be a nice anniversary kind of issue, so that's what we're doing next week. Top 25 favorite progressive rock bands of all time. And it's curious to see how much this has changed for me, because when I originally did it, I did a top 15 of my well-known ones, and then I did a 10 of the newer stuff. I'm not going to do that this time. This time I'm just going to go right at it with my top 25. So I hope that you'll visit me and see that. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you again soon. Have a good day. Take care. Bye.